Welcome to another Leadership Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are speaking with Jay Ireland, a global executive and director. Jay had nearly 40 years of experience leading multiple industries across GE, culminating with his role as CEO of GE Africa. Jay, thank you very much for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate it.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you've recently joined a publicly traded board, and can you share a little bit with us what it's been like to be on the board side now?
Sure. I joined this company, Gates Corporation, back in the fall. I retired from GE after 38 years. Our company policy was not to have board seats while you were working, which some companies have. So I look forward to getting on the board and interacting from that perspective versus being on the execution side, so to speak. At a board, whether it's a public company or a private company, there's similar requirements, except the public company has got a lot more regulatory issues around it. And so from that of what a board member has to look at and make sure that the fiduciary responsibilities, et cetera. So I would say it's been kind of an interesting thing for me personally, because you have a meeting and you sit there and you talk and you kind of want to get at it and do things. And really a board's role is a little bit more listen, kind of be a sounding board, maybe give a couple of points here or there, but really it's up to the management team to make things happen. And after doing it for 38 years at GE, it's sort of been the first thing you want to do is, we could do this or we could do that. So it's been kind of interesting.
So can you say a little bit about what you think are the most important responsibilities of the board?
Yeah. Well, number one, obviously, is the fiduciary and governance piece. So audit committee, the comp committee, all the stuff. Those are the things that fundamentally get measured pretty much by not just share owners, but also by the regulatory authorities. And then, of course, there's the execution piece of running the business, whatever the business the company's in. Again, a lot of focus is put on the audit committee and the comp committee and how they're doing the governance roles. And there it's more of making sure that the compensation structure is pushing into the people to do the right performance. And there's a lot of different ways to think about that, but fundamentally that's one of the key things. Are you within the realm of your industry practices, et cetera? On the audit side, obviously it's the financial accounts. Are they, right? Are you paying attention to following the laws appropriately? All of that. So that's a little more cut and dried because the accounting rules are pretty straightforward. And then, the third thing is again, more of the advisory standpoint on execution and how companies do it. But I would say, in my opinion, the key two are the governance and aspect from both audit and compensation committees.
And you alluded to the idea that there maybe it's been a little, at least interesting for you to be in that position where you're not the one actually doing it, everything, and having to come. Have there been any other things that you maybe not, I don't want to say fully surprised about, but that have been interesting to you?
Yeah, no, I think it's, the big thing on companies is obviously the people who run companies are the main keys to success. And so you have a good CEO, chairman, CEO, however that is allocated out. But let's just say the CEO, and then his or her direct reports, and then from below that, it's more difficult to really see, from a board's perspective. You'll see people come in and present and stuff at times, but how they operate and what they do, that's when you look at the policies and the governance, so to speak. So I think that's the key. So it's, in my opinion, it's always been about having the right people in place and the right incentives and the measurement systems, et cetera, that are going to drive the behavior to act as a team and really go forward and, do the right execution. And with that, you tend to weather good times and bad times, which all companies will go through.
And so interesting, you're talking about acting like a team. I don't know that many of us really think about the board as being really a team. Can you say a little bit about, from your experience, are they really a cohesive group? Because they're really only coming in at kind of specific meetings, and what are some things that maybe to do to, does it even matter? And if it does matter, what are some things to do to
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think there is a value to be a team, but you have to be, there's a balance of the activist shareholders that are always, pushing and pushing in a very vocal way at times. Then you've got passive boards that are, buddies with the CEO, or, and everything's yes, we're going to do that, no rubber stamping, so to speak. And then in the middle. And I think that's the dynamic. So, when you see it now with some of the, especially in the news with some of these companies that are out there, the difference between an activist coming on board, let's say, and having a real disagreement with strategy, et cetera, versus the people that were incumbents, so to speak, and then how that gets resolved over a period of time. So it's always good to have a tension, which I think is, so that everybody's not just yes people. You don't want that either. So I think you need that underlying pushing back, if you will, and really questioning things, but doing it in the right way. So the team aspect, it's probably not as critical on the board as it is running within the company, but it still is, you should be respectful, you should be working together to a point of what you need to do, even if you have disagreements on policy and execution, that at least you can be civil and have a good discussion and come out, with an agreement on moving forward.
And you talked about tensions, and so the way I was hearing it, there needs to be a little bit of tension, not destructive, but a little bit between the board and the top management team to be creative, and then also a little bit of tension within the board. This is kind of how you made it sound.
I think it's constructive, tension from the standpoint of, let me push back on that idea, and or I don't agree, and if I, and again, you're in a board, unless some votes have to be unanimous or whatever, you're typically, you're going to go along. You make your points known, and if the majority is going to decides to go one way, that's kind of, that's democracy. So you have to deal with that. But at the same point in time, you then can have a dissident board member, but you don't want. Again, when you talk about it from a public company standpoint with share owners and stock, the board should be relatively united. Maybe not all in agreement, but united in how moving forward.
So can you talk a little bit then about how decisions get made in there? So because at the end, it sounds like at least the outward face needs to be united. So it looks like there's almost perfect agreement. So what's really going on in terms of how the boards are reaching these decisions?
On a normal functioning company, not in a problem, okay. Typically the CEO is going to come in with his or her team, present, quarterly results, strategy aspect, depending on what time of the year it is, issues that may have come up, et cetera. And you you first go through the committees, each one of the committees, and then the board meets. And then what the committees bring up as far as issues that the whole board should hear about. There may be business reviews, specific business reviews within specific divisions or whatever the company. And so it's really hearing how the operations are and where things go. And then the question becomes, being able to point through and maybe ask some questions of, did you think about this? Did you think about that? I have experience doing X, and you're going into that market now, and here's some of the concerns you ought to think about. So stuff like that. So it's more of an interactive. It should be interactive, not always, but it should be an interactive aspect with, again, the CEO really leading the effort with his team, with his or her team, and I think that's the dynamic that has to happen, and that person, the CEO, needs to encourage dialogue and and versus, again, just, acquiescence on, here's the pitch, okay, that's it. So I think the board has a responsibility to push back a little bit. And I think the strategy sessions, especially going, okay, we want to branch out here or there, or whatever, I think that's also one where the board can play a little bit more of a role because they may have more experience or see how things are working. When you're dealing with day-to-day stuff, it's really the operations guys and the CEO and their team and how they operate.
So speaking about the strategy aspect of it, and that's where you've said the board may, especially if moving into different areas, something like that. Can you talk a little bit, has the way that companies think about strategy and make decisions about strategy, separate even from the board, has that changed much over the last 20 years? And can you say a little bit about how and what that means?
I mean, number one, just the speed of change now. It's really dynamic, and it's a combination of technology. It's a combination of, geographic shrinking, if you will, of the world, the different capability of products, the ability of players not in your industry that disintermediates your company is so much greater now because of the ability, mostly of technology, internet, et cetera. Just if you think through it, and I think that's when you look at businesses that I've been in, like the entertainment industry. I mean, I was at NBC. We had television stations. We had a movie studio, Universal, cable channels, et cetera. Netflix wasn't around. The creative piece basically came through the same channels on a television or through a movie theater. Now it's a whole different game. How do you play that? Are you better off being in the content game, or are you better off being in the technology side, or do you do both? And you're seeing that play out in the industry today. You have the same thing as disintermediation around. You take a look at self-driving cars. People that are really leading the way are not automobile companies. They're technology companies, and they're bringing. Now the automobile companies are connecting with them and working with them, but the technology isn't theirs, even though that it's their physical car, so to speak, or asset. So that whole dynamic is changing dramatically, and I think we've almost taken it for granted on how fast it's happened. And so when you think about a strategy, everyone goes, well, we're going to do a 5-year look, we're going to do a 10-year look, and where we're going to go. And I think that's where it's okay to have that kind of, what is it going to be this far out, but you have to have the ability to really differentiate earlier. And sometimes companies get hooked on a strategy, and they want to play it out rather than really being a lot more flexible than they should be.
And GE was really the gold standard of that, of kind of planning and strategizing, et cetera. And you are obviously super successful within that system. Can you talk a little bit about what makes a good leader, particularly in terms of thinking about strategic decisions going forward?
Well, I think you have to be always learning. The industry you're in, the industries that are around you, that kind of are out there, that can impact how your industry and then obviously how your company is operating within that. And then you've got competitive issues, et cetera. But I think most people, the competitive aspect tends to be ones that are kind of in front of you every day. You're paying attention to the other company, their pricing, how they're putting their products out to market, et cetera. So I think, and you can get focused in on that and not see something coming in from, if you will, the outside. And I think that's what's happened to a lot of companies. So it's a lot of, in my opinion, just being totally open to thinking about everything and seeing everything. And it's a combination of what's out there from a technology standpoint, a social aspect, what's going on socially, what's going on from a standpoint of geographic expansion and how you're going to do that. How do you operate in certain countries? Is it more advantageous, et cetera? And I think you're seeing that play out right now, especially in the tech front, with a combination of policy, between privacy. The EU is doing one thing, the US has another, China's another, artificial intelligence, same deal. How is that going to play out from a standpoint of global standards, protecting all the data, et cetera? And and then you've got countries and policymakers, and we're in the middle of that right now. So it's kind of interesting to watch, but on the other hand, it's got big ramifications if it's not done right. And I think those are the kind of things that, I go back to an experience that I had back in the 90s where the euro came on board. So we were operating, I was in a plastics business, and we were operating in all these, over and living in Europe and operating in all these countries, and then all of a sudden, you got to get rid of your Deutschmarks and your French francs and your Italian lira, and you go to euro. And the disruption that it caused in your financial systems and how you think about pricing, how you thought about going to market in those countries, playing currency ways, changed dramatically. And that came from a policy change. So those are the things that, you got to really pay. You got to be an absorber of anything you can.
So it sounds almost impossible for one person, no matter how great a leader they are, to be able to go from everything from currency change to changes in technology, et cetera. Does that put a premium now on having a really strong team around?
Oh,
you?
yeah, absolutely. You got to have people that are, and I think that's a mistake that many people make, is that they're afraid to bring in people that add to their team. They may be smarter, they may bring a different view, they may be a threat to that person, but you've got to be, as a leader, you've got to be bigger than that and really just focus on getting the best people that can bring differing views around what you want to do. And they may be, they disagree, and they may be a little bit more focused around other things and push back, and that's okay. I think you got to have that. And I think the other thing, though, is if you do have a team like that as a leader, the one thing you can't do is immediately come out and say, well, you got to listen and let it play out. Because the minute you say something as a leader, you've already biased the discussion one way or the other. And I think that's also a mistake a lot of people make.
So as we were walking over here, you mentioned that you'd been in the military for a while.
Yeah.
Do you have clear ways that you think that influenced your
yeah.
leadership style? And
It was the most impactful thing. 22-year-old coming out of school, college, and going into I was in ROTC, and then and this was back in the Cold War in the late 70s, right after Vietnam. And the biggest thing was I realized that immediately I didn't have any of the answers hardly at all. And I'm dealing with vets, 20-year and non-commissioned officers, guys that worked for me, had all the answers. So I had to make sure and figure out, how do I get those guys wanting to help me succeed? And you just do different things. You're not it's not my way or the highway. It's you listen, you work with them, you respect their ideas, you respect what they do, and you make them feel like they're part of the solution and or the decision and the solution. And I think that's again one of the issues that people have when they come into a situation as a leader, is that they feel like they've got to lead. And leading doesn't always have to be, you're always out in front. And in the military, it was a combination of both. It's, you are out in front when there is danger and things like that, but on basic decisions and how you do it, you try to get as broad a team as you can and get all their experience and really respect it. And then they help you be successful, because you're not going to be successful if your team isn't supporting you.
Yeah, those sound like great lessons for all leaders.
Yeah, and it was, I had it coming right out of college, so I was, it helped a lot. And it took me probably another 10 years in GE to get the same level of responsibility on people management that I had when I was, a kid, so to speak.
Thank you very much
Sure.
for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was super fun for me and educational for all of us.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, very nice. Fun.
Thank you.
Good.